Hi everyone. This presentation is conducted to give to you the result of our research, which is entitled The Importance of Language-Based Approach in Teaching Literature for Third-Year College Students of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English.
Right. Chapter 1, Introduction. According to Dr. N. Vibos, an English professor in H.M. Patel Institute of English Training and Research, a language-based approach is quite a broad approach which covers a range of different goals and procedures. The main aim of this approach is to guide the students on how to interpret a text and make critical judgments of it in order to fully understand the whole context and to determine the purpose why it was written. Right, so language-based approach is truly broad because it requires a carefully planned strategies in order to integrate language practice while teaching literature at the same time. These strategies may be in the form of motivation or activities like making the students read a number of paragraphs in a literary text through group reading, read a number of lines in a poem by groups, write a sentence on the board, and express their opinion towards this text strictly by speaking English. All right, let's move on to the chapter 2, review of related literature. All right, so in this chapter, we have two literatures. We have first the local literature, and second is the foreign literature. All right, so in local literature, we have the approaches and strategies in teaching Philippine literature employed by instructors by Grena Mary Joy P. Semene. All right, in this research paper, the researcher conducted a survey about which approach in teaching literature is most commonly used and rarely used by the instructors in the Bukidnon State University. The results of this study show that paraphrastic and personal response approach were mostly used by the instructors involved in the said study. Other preferred approaches are information-based and moral philosophical. In this research paper, the language-based approach was rarely used according to instructors for the reason that language-based approach is time-consuming and is really hard to prepare, not unlike the rest of approaches. Second, approaches in teaching literature employed by senior high school teachers by Robin C. Parohenog. Right, so in this research paper, the researcher conducted a survey about which approach in teaching literature is most employed and least employed by the senior high school teachers of Bayabas Trade High School in teaching literature. The results of this study show that out of the 6 approaches in teaching literature, only the moral philosophical approach was rarely used by the instructors, while the information-based approach appears to be the most commonly used approach in teaching literature. Other approaches that was preferred by the instructors in the said study are paraphrastic, personal response, and stylistics. Also, in this research paper, the language-based approach was also seldom used as well. It was second to the last approach that was least employed by the instructors in the said study. All right, so next, in foreign literature, we have also two. The first one is the language-based approaches to understanding literature, a creative activity module by Kiran Kaur Dillon and Surita Morgan. Okay, so in this research paper tells about the importance of creative activity module in employing language-based approach in teaching literature. The researchers strongly believe that the focus of the creative activity module must focus on the 4 macro skills. The following skills are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The researchers also pointed out that each activity should have a proper strategy, which is objectively aligned with the student's level of competency. Second, foreign literature, a literary approach to teaching English language in a multicultural classroom by Chaudhary. Right, so this research paper tells about 2 approaches in teaching English in a multicultural classroom. the reader response approach, and the language-based approach. In this research study, both approaches were greatly emphasized. The researcher also added that it's not only the approach that matters in teaching literature, but the materials and resources as well, especially in capturing the attention of the students.
For chapter 3, here we are going to discuss the methodology and sources of data. So as we go on with our discussion, let's discuss our research design. This study employs descriptive design and in form of quantitative research. And we, the researchers, conducted the study to prove the importance of language-based approach in teaching literature using a sample population of the third year bachelor in secondary education major in English students of ICCT colleges. The focus of the study is to establish the interrelation of importance of language-based approach in teaching literature and its benefits, especially for students in interpreting certain literary texts. For the instrumentation, we used the the Google form in doing the survey or in conducting the survey, and the study focuses on the interrelation, as what mentioned a while ago, the interrelation of the language-based approach in teaching literature in achieving the full potential in learning and interpreting a certain literary text by incorporating the four core skills, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking to better understand literature makes the students use their higher order thinking skills. For this survey, we used survey forms distributed through Google. And the survey forms were divided into three portions, namely, one, the personal data of the respondents, two, questionnaires which included basic information protocols, and third, survey questionnaires comprised of more technical and analytical questions about language-based approach. Now, as we move forward to our chapter 4, here in this chapter, we are going to do the presentation, analysis, and data interpretation. And you can see on this chart on the next slide the profile of our respondents. All in all, we have 45 respondents. And this table on this slide shows to us the different groups, the frequency, and the percentage of the respondents to our surveys. Under sex or gender, we have categories male and female. And for the frequency, for males, we have 6 respondents, and for females, we have 39 respondents, a total of 45. And for their percentage, we have 13.3% and 86.7% respectively, a total of 100%. Now, under course or field and year, we have just one course predominant, which is Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English, third year. So since it's just one course, we have a solid number, 45 and 100%. And for their age, we have subdivisions for the following ages. We group them according to ages 18 to 25 years old, 26 to 35 years old, and 36 years old and above. For their frequency, we have 33 years old, 33 respondents for the 18 to 25 years old. We have 8 respondents for the 26 to 35 years old, and we have 4 for the 36 years old and above, a total of 45. For their percentage in the 100 percentile, 73%, 0.3%, 17.6%, and 9.1 respectively, making the whole number of 100%. Now let's see. So this is basically the summary of the gathered information from our respondents. Next, we have for our chapter 5. So our chapter 5 is the conclusion of our research. Looking at the conclusions that can be drawn regarding the individuals and special fascinating issues in connection to language-based approach from the different answers of the respondents.
Okay, so in this chapter, We will see the conclusions drawn regarding the individual and special fascinating issues in connection to language-based approach from the different answers of the respondents. This section will bring up the positive and negative aspects from the students' and teachers' perspective.
For our summary of findings, the discussion in the literary process with the questionnaires and the individual evaluation all appeared to have a positive impact on the students.
Right, the process and the questionnaires help us also to evaluate the impact of the reader response theory and the cultural familiarity to our respondents.
And so, for our conclusion, we therefore conclude that the most interesting results found or conclusions drawn during the process concerning the individual participation are to start with the fact that a certain piece of literary text which is not carefully selected might decrease the student's interest in the discussions can clearly give the individual reader another perspective of the same text.
Okay, so in addition to that, the most interesting results found or conclusions drawn during the process concerning the individual participation are as follows. Number one, a certain piece of literary text which is not carefully selected might decrease the students' interest in the discussions. Number two, each individual carries his or her experiences to the understanding of the text. Number three, others' individual reflections help the students widen their imagination and subsequently to receive a larger understanding of the complexity of literary text.
And our recommendations, the research that we had conducted. So this one is to the future researchers. The universality of literature implies that literary texts written in one particular language are emotionally, intellectually, and pedagogically accessible to speakers from other languages as well. However, what is of importance is that learners should have the opportunity to draw on their personal experiences to understand and interpret literary texts.
In addition to that, the most important aspect to be put into consideration in conducting a research is that the learners should have the opportunity to draw on their personal experiences to understand and interpret literary texts.
And to the teachers, our co-teachers, language teachers are recommended to allow learners to relate what they read or read in literary texts to what they have experienced during their lives.
And yes, we know and understand how hard it is to teach students, for we share the same endeavor with you. Thus, language teachers are recommended to allow learners to relate what they have read in literary texts to what they have experienced during their lives. Such as personal involvement with literary texts increases learners' pleasure of reading literary texts and helps them socialize into particular cultures.
And to our dearest students, since the ultimate objective of language text-based teaching curricula is to develop learners' proficiency so that they can cope with the requirements of out-of-class communications, and our learners should see literature as a resource for the attainment of that ultimate objective and not as an end in itself.
Okay, and finally, to the students, since the ultimate objective of a language-based teaching curricula is to develop learners' proficiency, you should see literature as a resource for the attainment of that ultimate objective and not as an end in itself.
So there we go with how our research, the whole research process had allowed us to come up with this result. Thank you and God bless you.